read the book that Bill Clinton read while he was a student in Dr. Quigley's classes. A good place to start with what he was taught is to go to page 950 of Tragedy and Hope. This is what Dr. Quigley wrote. There does exist and has existed for a generation an international Anglophile network. By the way, the word Anglophile means primarily English. But notice that he also called it international, which means Americans and other Europeans could join. Dr. Quigley wrote on page 324 that this conspiracy has a mysterious purpose. The aim of creating a world system of financial control able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. Dr. Quigley named names, and I must admit that some of them quite likely were Jews, but I would say that the overwhelming majority of them were not. And one of those men that Dr. Quigley identified as being a member of this conspiracy was Cecil Rhodes, an extremely wealthy and powerful individual. Quigley says that Mr. Rhodes feverishly exploited the diamond and gold fields of South Africa and rose to be Prime Minister of Cape Colony from 1890 to 1896. Cape Colony is now part of the modern nation known as South Africa. In fact, the African nation of Rhodesia was named after Cecil Rhodes. That nation is now called Zimbabwe. Not many people have nations named after them, but Cecil Rhodes did. Dr. Quigley continued, in the middle 1890s, Rhodes had a personal income which was spent freely for his mysterious purposes. These purposes centered on his desire to bring all the habitable portions of the world under their control. For this purpose, Rhodes left part of his great fortune to found the Rhodes Scholarships at Oxford. The purpose of the Rhodes Scholarships was to invite intelligent students from all over the world to come to Oxford University to learn in more detail about this international network, and then invite them to become part of the power controlling the world today. So where did Bill Clinton go after graduation from Georgetown in 1968? This is page 36 of the U.S. News and World Report article for October the 19th, 1992, and it shows that from 1968 to 1970, Bill Clinton was at Oxford studying as a Rhodes Scholar. This picture was taken in 1970 after he returned to the United States from his 2 years at Oxford. I can only presume that young Bill Clinton taught Hillary what he had learned from Dr. Quigley between 1964 and 1968, and what he learned while on a Rhodes Scholarship program from 1968 to 1970. And I think that part of what the Rhodes Scholarship program taught young Bill Clinton was contempt for modern civilization, and that was shown by his growth of long hair and a beard, meaning a contempt for the traditionally clean-shaven appearance of the day. And apparently he taught Hillary as well. Dr. Quigley then explained on page 582 what the Rhodes Scholarships organization did in America. They set up a Council on Foreign Relations in New York City. And then on page 952, Quigley continued, the American branch of this organization has played a very significant role in the history of the United States. So in 1988, several years after he returned to America, Bill Clinton joined the Council on Foreign Relations. And then in 1992, the Council delivered the election to President Bill Clinton. So Clinton was exposed to the evidence that there was an international conspiracy at work in the world, but that it was not Jewish, but primarily English, but also international. And Dr. Quigley admitted that he had been shown their secret records for 2 years. And then he learned more while in a scholarship program set up by one of their principal members. So in summary, Clinton learned it was international, but primarily English. If you want to learn more about what Clinton learned from Dr. Quigley, may I suggest that you watch my DVD entitled Clinton's Conspiracy. Details on how you may obtain a copy will be provided at the end of this presentation. This is Mel Gibson, the famous movie star. As perhaps you will recall, he was arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol a couple of years ago, and during his arrest he made several charges to the arresting officers that the Jews were behind all of the wars of the past and that they were actually a part of a thing called the Jewish conspiracy. This view is not new to me. I first read about it way back in about 1963 and have been exposing it ever since. Because I knew then, as I now know, it is simply not true. So these beliefs about the Jewish conspiracy have been held for some time and are held by people even today. The first time I heard about the claim was when I read a pamphlet written by Robert Welch, the founder of the John Birch Society. It was called The Neutralizers, and it was written in 1963. I read it, and it was the first time that I had heard that there were actually people who believed that this conspiracy was led by the Jews. I would like to quote from Mr. Welch's pamphlet. He started by quoting. Notice he's quoting someone who believed in it. This is what Welch believed a person who believes in it would say. It is actually a Jewish conspiracy run by the Jews as part of a plan to have the Jews rule the entire world. From the time it was started by a Jew named Karl Marx, and later carried out by other Jews like Ulanov Lenin and Bronstein Trotsky. Mr. Welch was writing about Karl Marx, the so-called father of communism, and Nikolai Lenin and Leon Trotsky, the two revolutionaries who led the bloody communist revolution in Russia in 1917. Mr. Welch explained that this supporter of the Jewish conspiracy theme would claim that Lenin's real name was Ulanov and Trotsky's real name was Bronstein, meaning that they had concealed their names to conceal the fact that both of these men were actually Jews. Those who believe in the Jewish conspiracy claim that this is a common strategy of those Jews who are in the conspiracy. They change their names so that it will not appear as if the Jews are running the conspiracy. I can honestly say that in all of my research, I never found one of these writers who ever documented their supposed claims. We are supposed to believe it, apparently, simply because they say it. But that is not good enough for me. I have become an honorary citizen of the state of Missouri called the Show Me State, meaning that if someone makes a claim, I ask them to show me their proof. And if they do not have the proof, I will not believe their claims. And I would like to recommend that you also become an honorary citizen of Missouri. Ask any writer or historian to prove his charges, and then may I suggest that you ignore the works of any who cannot. We simply do not have time to waste in believing unsubstantiated claims. So way back in 1963, way before this conspiracy was proven to be a religious view of man without a belief in the creator God of the universe, but a belief in the false god named Lucifer, also called Satan, the devil. It was simply called the Communist Conspiracy. Please notice here that Welch was quoting someone who identified these men as being Jews. Mr. Welch did not personally believe the claim. This is Reverend Richard Wurmbrand, a Christian minister from Romania, who has suffered at the hands of the communists in his native land. This is a book he has written entitled Marx and Satan, published in 1985. In it, Reverend Wurmbrand shows us the evidence that Karl Marx was a worshiper of the devil. It is true that Marx was born a Jew, but after his father converted to Christianity, Karl Marx, as a young man, converted as well. Marx was actually baptized as a Christian during this time. Reverend Wurmbrand quotes the early writings of Marx, such as this that Marx wrote entitled The Union of the Faithful with Christ, in which Mr. Marx wrote, "Through love of Christ we turn our hearts towards our brethren. Union with Christ is everything noble and great. Once a Jew becomes a Christian, he is no longer a Jew, because the Jews do not believe that Jesus is the Messiah promised by the Old Testament prophets." But Marx went off to college and while away from the Christian influence for the first time, and was away. While a student at the university at the age of 19, Marx wrote this: "I wish to avenge myself against the God, or the one who rules above. And see this sword? The Prince of Darkness sold it to me." This sounds to me like a person who has rejected the teaching of Jesus to embrace the teachings of the devil, often called the Prince of Darkness. The Reverend quotes a friend of Marx's when Marx was 23 years old as writing, "Marx called the Christian religion one of the most immoral of religions." Then Reverend Wurmbrand identifies the reason why Marx had rejected the teachings of Jesus. Marx had discovered, or actually joined, a satanic cult while in college, led by a priestess named Joanna Southcott, who claimed to be in contact with a demon named Shiloh. Now the question is this: if a man leaves Judaism to become a Christian and then leaves that to become a Satanist, is he still a Jew or a Christian? And the answer has to be no, he is a Satanist. Marx had become a Satanist. And after he became a Satanist, he would have to leave both the Jewish and Christian faiths that believed in the God of the Bible. He would no longer be a Jew or a Christian. And he would have to leave Christianity, the faith that believes in the divinity of Jesus Christ. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that both Nikolai Lenin and Leon Trotsky were Jews. Were they still Jews when they became communists? Was Lenin still a Jew when he wrote as a communist, "We are the masters. Complete indifference to suffering is our duty. The greatest cruelty is a merit. Through a systematic terror, every lie shall be lawful. we will find the way to a base